I'm going to start now, okay? And
Okay.
people will just join in when they get here. All right, so good evening, everyone. Really, Joe, Agnes, and Amber. My name is Beverly Carter, also known as Miss Bev, and I am the current president of the Alliance of Non-Traditional Students, the RSO here on UNLV that is for the older or married or neurodiverse or anything that's not straight out of high school. In fact, for all the research that I've done since starting UNLV and becoming a non-traditional student advocate, I only recently learned that if you have a GED, you're considered non-traditional. And I didn't even know that. So there are many characteristics that can make you a non-traditional student. I tend to say age first because there's no one definition, there's no one agreement on what a non-traditional student is, but no matter what website you read, they will say age. They don't always agree on what the age is, but they do agree that being over a certain age, 23, 24, 25. So I do start with age and I focus on that because that's what I think I brought to the table. Anyway, so I will tell you a little bit about myself. I started UNLV with my bachelor's in 2017 and joined a Facebook group where I heard voices, even though I'm reading, and all the voices sounded very young. So I asked, was there anybody here a little bit older? And three or four people said yes. And I said, is there a group for us? And the admin said no. And so Tom Fairchild, who I didn't know from Adam, took it upon himself to make a Facebook group. And that's the Facebook group that you're in today, if you're a member. And that Facebook group started with five people in 2017, and we now have what, 450, 460, something like that. Because I do ask those who graduate to stay, and still help out and still, lend their voice. So I've seen tremendous changes. Because I'm a loudmouth New Yorker, so I've seen a lot of changes. I would go to every single meeting. What about us? What about us? You think I pay the same tuition as everybody else. How come, and things were not as accessible. And now, and in fact, we were even mentioned. Now, whenever they speak and they speak about diversity, inclusivity, they actually say and non-traditional students, where they didn't. Still more could be done, but a lot has been done. But we really started with no agenda whatsoever. I would love to, too bad Tom won't be able to make it. He was going to be here, but his job called him in. But I've got to ask him. But we just wanted a place where we could go talk. We didn't have an agenda. It wasn't political. We weren't trying to be advocates. But here we are. And every paper that I have done, especially in my master's, because now my master's is in higher ed. Also, my bachelor's, I graduated in 2021. One of my professors said to me, are you going to get a master's? I said, nah, I'm not that excited about entrepreneurial management. I did it. It was been my thing. My associate's was in business management. But he said to me, I want to talk to you about higher ed. And I'm like, what the heck is higher ed? And here I am, and I love it. I'm in the right place. And I want to work with UNLV, hopefully, um, or other schools, if possible, as a consultant to help them formulate programs for non-traditional students. So that's who we are. So today we have two speakers, and I guess I'm going to be the third. We'll see. I was not planning to speak, but um, I might lend my voice. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So, Suzanne, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Suzanne McGoldrick, and I just graduated on December 17th with a double major, sociology and anthropology. And what else did you want to know? Oh, my current age. I just turned 70 yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
What was you tell your degree. Okay, fine. And then we have Shavonne. Shavonne, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Shavonne Belford, and I am 36. I am almost 37. I will be graduating in spring of 2026, and I am a criminal justice major.
Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, again, my name is Miss Bev. I did my BA here at UNLV in entrepreneur. Actually, it's multidisciplinary studies, so it's entrepreneurial management and urban studies together. And now I'm doing my master's in higher ed, and in March I'll be 68. So the reason I asked the ladies to tell their ages is because I feel it's an important aspect. Give you a little story, a quick story. There was four of us, and we went out a couple of months ago, and we're all UNLV people, two graduates and two current students. And we were going to a disco concert, so we looked like a disco ball. We were all sparkly and shiny, and the whole thing campy. I was head to toe, head to toe. My sneakers had sequins. And so the waitress, we went out for dinner first. And the waitress said, "Who do you ladies know? And where are you going? And how do you know each other?" And I gave her my little, we are non-traditional students, and each person introduced themselves and gave their age, and two had already graduated. The youngest one of us was 42, 50, 50, 50, 52, and me, 68. Oh, 67. And she said, "Wow, I thought I was too old to go to school. I'm 27." So that's why I feel it's important, right? I'm on a bandwagon. If you say hello to me, I'm like, "Do you know I'm a student at UNLV? You should go back to college." So I can be really obnoxious. But it's just become my passion. So let's find out why Shavonne decided to pursue a degree.
I tried going to college right out of high school, which is, the traditional path. But, after several years of struggling and, trying to maintain grades, I decided I needed, for my own well being, to do my own thing, get some life experience. So at 20 years old, I dropped out, much to the chagrin of my parents. And then I, did some things with life for a few years, got my job um, at UNLV. I always knew I would go back to school at some point. I wasn't expecting it to take 10 years, but being an employee at UNLV gave me the ability to go to school and actually finish my degree because I also am very blessed to work in a division that, you know, allows me to pursue my education during work hours. If it's slow, they tell me do your homework. One of our highest ranked officials in our division, he got his degree the same way. And so education is very important. So I've been very lucky to have a stable, group now to support me forwarding my education.
Support is one of the things that we learn about in higher education. If it's from the school, if it's from the family, from the friends, there is definitely a correlation between support and graduation. So, Suzanne, could you tell us what made you decide to pursue a degree?
Well, actually, it was quite accidental. I was a teenage mother and a teenage wife. I got married at 15 and was married until I was 21. I have two children from that marriage. And I figured if I was old enough to be a mom and I was old enough to be a wife, I didn't have to go to school. So I was a high school dropout. When I got divorced at 22, I got my GED. And then I took a class here and a class there. And it actually took me decades just to get my 2-year degree. And I went to CSN, and when I graduated from CSN in 2018, it felt so good. I mean, when I was young, there was no expectation of me to be anything except a wife and a mother. And I knew there was more to me than that. I was in the gaming industry for 24 years as a dealer. And I remember standing on a game at Caesar's Palace thinking, I think I could do more than this. And not that gaming was bad, but gaming was very good to me. But when I graduated from CSN, I was so proud of myself. And I was working on a degree. I chose sociology. I actually chose sociology because it didn't have a lot of math involved. Because in my decades of a class here and a class there, every time I came back to school, I had to take those um, placement tests. And I ended up taking algebra 3 times. And I remember the last time I took it, I asked the math teacher, and I got to say, math teachers are as dry as dirt as far as I'm concerned. You know, I asked him, give me a reason to remember this because I have this brain. If I can't utilize it, it's gone. And he said, well, if you're ever going to pour concrete, and I was like, well, that's not going to freaking happen, you know. But anyway, uh, I chose sociology and I liked sociology. Sociology is about the study of people and groups of people and why we do what we do and the changes that have happened to us over the years, let's say. And my first sociology class really like gave me some clue into what my mother and my father had grown up in. They were both born in the Depression and they grew up during that time. So, anyway, I graduated from CSN and I was really proud of myself. I remember my son, who is now 54 years old. I remember in the beginning, he was like, well, what are you going to study? And I told him sociology, and his attitude was like, what is that? Because he had a degree in business and finance. And I guess a lot of people go into business and finance because that's where the dollar is. Everybody's chasing the dollar. Um, and I felt embarrassed and ashamed and not good enough from his attitude. But I loved sociology. So after I graduated at CSN, I decided I came over to UNLV in 2020. Well, actually, I broke myself. There was a couple of things. COVID happened. But in 2020, I came over and was going full time and going to pursue the Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology. And then, quite by accident, I can't really tell you why I took a class in anthropology, but it really piqued my interest. And so I started taking classes in anthropology. And I remember talking to my advisor, and she said, I asked her, like about, I didn't know anything about minors and majors and none of that. Every step of the way was kind of, I don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't really ask too many people because of my age, quite honestly. Um, but she said I could get a minor in anthropology. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. And then I came back and I said, well, if I wanted to come back after graduation and get a major in anthropology, what would that take? And to get the minor in to get to major in anthropology, to get 2 majors, it took 15 extra credits. But to come back after graduation to get a major in anthropology took 30 credits. That's what I said. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So that's what I did. So it's not like I grew up thinking, or anybody encouraged me to go to school because they didn't. They didn't talk to me about school when I was young. There was no expectations of me. Um, and getting a degree was just a personal goal. Um, and 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 a great satisfaction when I walked across that stage. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Ladies, I will, if you have questions, you can write them down. If you want to, I have a set of questions I'm going to ask, and then we're going to open the floor after uh, the questions are asked. So, you're going to think that I'm stealing Suzanne's story. I'm from New York originally, and I went I'm so sorry. I'm only hesitating because it's just is. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I just kind of stopped for a second. So, I was in what was called then, I know what they call them now, but they call them intellectually gifted children classes. So, I entered sixth grade or exited sixth grade with a 10th grade math level and a 12th grade reading level, which actually the test only tested to 12th grade. So my reading probably was higher than that. But my math never got higher than 10th grade. And I attended the Bronx High School of Science in New York. If you want to look it up, it's one of the top uh, public high schools in the country, top in New York, and has graduated more Nobel Prize winners than any other school in the US. So if you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is, I'm not going to say we were friends, but I used to pass him in the hall all the time because he graduated 1 year behind me. I skipped eighth grade, which I throw in my kid's face all the time. Skipped eighth grade. I'm smart. Anyway, and I'm so smart that I gave birth to twin boys 2 days after I turned 18. So very similar to Suzanne's story in that regard. So also when I did finally get myself to college with twins, I also, single mom, I had to start, work, this, that. My brother had a daughter and her mother died. She was 2.5. So I took my niece in. So start. And only until I graduated UNLV in 2021 have I been able to say this without being ashamed. It took me 11 years to get an associate's degree. I never looked at that as persistence. I was embarrassed that it took me so long to get an associate's degree. But I would stop and maybe I'd stop for 2 years and I'm like, I'm going back, and so I kept going. And that's in business management. I knew when I was in my 40s that, I'm so sorry, let me back up a little. So the school that I went to was very ethnic, actually, Blacks and Hispanics were in the minority, but it was basically ethnically diverse. But a good amount of my friends went to Harvard, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, and then the joke is, you went to Princeton? Oh, I'm sorry. You could make it to Harvard and Yale. Oh, that was like a joke, right? Some people went to other schools, but I just had my 50th high school reunion last year, and the people are like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to Harvard, I didn't go to Yale. That's where I came from. Okay. So it always hung over me, and my parents and my family had expectations for me to have a college. My parents were also Depression era in Jim Crow South. So, and my mother was valedictorian, and had honors in English and math, but right after that, you go work in a factory or you work in somebody's house cooking and cleaning. So there was no college. That wasn't an so they had all those hopes of me and I got knocked up. So somewhere in my 40s, I said, you know what? I don't want to be 65 in the snow and cold. And one of my sons had moved to Vegas. And I'm like, okay, before I get to Vegas, I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm going to learn how to drive because, we New Yorkers don't drive. We don't need to. And then I'm going to move to Vegas and I'm going to retire and I'm going to be chill. And that didn't happen because then my mother got Alzheimer's. I had to take care of my mom. I applied for college. I did do 2 semesters of a 4-year college, 2 semesters, 3 semesters, but I applied like 5 or 6 times and I just couldn't do it because I had to take care of my mother and Alzheimer's doesn't get better, so it was more and more and more. Finally, she passed. I moved here in 2011 and I was intimidated by the 1.5 hour commute because I live up by Aliante by bus. I've always taken a bus. I've never didn't know how to drive. I'm a New Yorker, but an hour and a half, there's no place in New York City that's an hour and a half by bus because you have a subway. You wouldn't do an hour and a half on a bus. You get on the subway, you'd be there in 20 minutes. So it took me a while. Uber, I give Uber credit for getting me to college because then Uber was my backup. I was like, I can do this. but still a couple of things interrupted me, but I got in 2017. So I told my story before. I'm now doing my master's in higher education, specifically with a concentration. Every paper in my master's is about non-traditional students. All of my research is about non-traditional students. I've become very interested in formerly incarcerated, even though I have no personal experience. I have nobody in my family that was formerly incarcerated. I have absolutely no idea why, right? And also sex workers, So I entered college wanting to start a not-for-profit teaching women how to start their own business, but women who are justice and system impacted. So specifically, and I have a background in doing this in New York, running a workshop teaching women how to start their own business, but the difference would be with the assumptions they didn't have any money, right? You're not going to open the store. You're not going to go to the bank because the bank is not going to loan to you because you got a felony conviction. But I'm going to show you everything you need to know about marketing and about that. And plus, I'm a tax professional. It's my 26th year as a tax professional. And so I was not going to teach them how to do their tax returns, but at least to teach them how to do their records and have their records straight and how not to get in trouble with IRS. But what made me go to school really is always liking school, always doing well in school. And it may sound kind of vain or what, I don't know, it's true, but I went to this prestigious school and I didn't, so I will tell this. So last year in May was our 50th high school reunion. There was about 250 people there. All right. And I have my friends, right? But I'm also connected with people, or maybe they're not my friends on Facebook. Most of my Facebook friends are from my high school. And then maybe I'm not their friend, but they're friends with a friend and they see my post and stuff because I kind of do a lot on Facebook. Um, Somebody came up to me and put their arm around me. They waited till I was alone. They put my arm around me and got close and said, Beverly, they whispered, I'm so proud of you going back to college. Do you know that happened 6 times? Six, six different people came up to me and took me to the side and just whispered to me, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. So, and one guy hugged me and said it in front of everybody. I'm so proud of you. I love that you're going back to school. To this day, I don't know who that guy is. I have no freaking idea. I'm like, who's this guy? I don't know who this guy is. 50 years, come on. Yeah. I still, and I looked him up and I looked him up in the yearbook. I'm like, I still don't know who this guy is. I just don't. Anyway, but that's why I went back to school. So we all have our different reasons for going back to school, but I'm hearing support. I'm hearing first generation. I'm hearing lack of support. I'm hearing personal development. I'm hearing overcoming. And a lot of people these days look at college as I want to make that money, but there are different reasons when you get a little older for why you want to go to college. And there's nothing wrong with making that money and getting that job, but um, I definitely have a question that will lead to that. So let's just get in. So Sophia, Agnes, Joe, and Amber. I know Amber says she just started school. So this question hopefully will help the ladies. Typically, how much time do you spend doing assignments each week and or did do each week because Suzanne has graduated already? And how did you work that into your life? How did you work getting your homework done into your life, Suzanne?
Well, I have my own business. I'm a balloon artist. I own Sin City Balloons. And so while I was going to school, um, I really wasn't I really wasn't heavily marketing my business. And it's not like I have a team of people that work with me. My husband was my coworker, but he died a year and a half ago. And so I really like the value, the flexibility of my business. It wasn't a 9 to 5. I didn't have to work like 8 hours a day or anything like that. Um, so I was able to and I did have gigs, I mean, like corporate gigs where I would have to do, like I was doing events for Circus Circus and the grand opening of the library, and stuff like that. Um, so I do balloon arches, balloon columns, balloon decor, organic designs and stuff like that. But it gave me the flexibility to work, to do my homework. And I would love to tell you I was like really on top of it, but I'm like a little TV junkie. And so, I like to watch TV. God talks to me in a language I understand, which is music, movies, and television. And so there were days when I gave like all day to my school, especially in this last semester when I was, I had the required classes of the history of anthropology, and I was like, holy hell, what if I fail, So there were days when I would spend like 8, 9, 10 hours working on papers and stuff like that. Because I have I have a daughter, she has ADHD. I have three grandsons that are on the autism spectrum, and they have ADHD. And my daughter told me, Mom, that's genetic. And I was like, well, that's bullshit. I was like, I've been a multitasker my entire life. You know, it's real easy for me to jump from this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing. But after a while, I started to recognize that there might be some truth to what she had told me. So, I don't want to say I had a learning disorder because I've never really considered myself, having that. But I remember a couple of semesters ago when I was like, this is probably jumping into your next question, but one of my teachers, she had these like timed quizzes, and I was like, I met her after class and I was like, what is it with this antiquated teaching methodology? And why does it have to be timed? And she suggested that I go to the DRC, and I really was offended, quite honestly.
Mhm.
I was like, there's nothing wrong with me, you know. But I did eventually when my husband died, and I was going to the care center
Mhm.
at school, and talking to the counselor, and I told her what my daughter had told me. I got hooked up with DRC, and started getting some of the DRC accommodations and stuff like that. And I didn't utilize them all because, I just, all my life I've just powered through stuff, but they were helpful. So anyway, um, how much time, sometimes more time than I really needed because I would start going in circles, and get confused, especially with the history of anthropology, because my teacher, wonderful teacher, would give us a lot of papers to read, and the papers had a lot of academic words, they were, for the academic population. And I was like, why don't they talk to us in layman's terms, man? I want to, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, right? So there were a lot of times when I had to go to the dictionary and find out what these words meant. And I'd have to read things over and over again to be able to grasp it. So probably longer than other people, but it was what I did. Does that answer your question?
And she got it done. I will say that one of the reoccurring themes, being the president of this group since 2017, a lot of people talk to me, a lot of people, I've taken surveys and things, and one of the reoccurring themes with non-traditional students is you're a fully realized adult. And though some people may be shy and quiet, we're more apt to talk directly to our professors and tell them um, what we like and don't like. And a lot, especially in undergrad, I've had problems. because of that. And also it's my personality. I had one professor come to me and say, lean over. We were supposed to be doing a paper, learning how to write. I think it was English 102 or 101 or something. And he was very conservative. He let things leak out. He was extremely, extremely conservative. And he leaned over and said, I don't like your topic. And without hesitation, I said, I don't care. And the class went, oh! And I'm like, you told us to write something that we're passionate about so we could learn how to write a thesis and how to do this and the body and how to do the conclusion. You didn't say that you had to approve the subject. I'm not changing my subject. And I went back to writing. Now, that he didn't say anything, but that's what happens when you get a grown ass woman in your class. All right. So that is one of, and it is kind of touching on our next question about the challenges. Do you feel a non-traditional student has to overcome? That was going to be the next challenge. So I'll kind of answer that and say sometimes that's the challenge. Being quiet or speaking up and then having to deal, with professors' pushback, which just from my experience, I can't speak for everyone, but the master's is a different world.
Well, I will say that I had one professor that gave us the ability to take our quizzes over and over again online,
Mm, hmm
which I found really helpful because it really put me back into the books
hmm
over and over because of course I want to be perfect, right? And it put me back into the books and I would take those quizzes until I got 100. You know what I mean? And I was really attached to my 3.86 grade point average, I didn't want to go lower than that. You know
Gotcha.
what I mean?
So,
So,
yeah. So, Shavonne, tell us about now. Shavonne has a traditional 9 to 5. So, how did you work that into getting your homework done? And we might as well throw in the next question was, and what challenges do you feel as a non-traditional student you had to overcome? Or what advantages being a non-traditional student? It could also be that.
Like I said, with my job, even though I work regular hours, I have a very flexible job that they're willing to say, hey, you got 20 minutes of downtime, do your homework, read if you need to, do what you need to do. But on an average day when I have homework, and work, I'll spend anywhere between 2 and 4 hours a night studying. um, working on papers, reading, taking notes, doing what I need to do. I'm very much one of these, do my day job, get home, eat some food, and immediately hop into work in the education mode, and studying. And I will say one of the challenges for me that I've faced, not only because I work full time, is I'm also disabled. And I don't drive because of being paraplegic. Um, and so I've had to, find education and classes online because I can't be, on campus till 10 o'clock at night taking classes, because I live over by Nellis Air Force Base, which by bus to UNLV is 2 hours one way, for me. And so I've had to, adapt to, that so that I can get my education and not burn myself out just by, trying to function.
do you
Thank
work on campus, Siobhan, or do
Um,
you work
I,
online?
I used to work 5 days a week on campus, but due to some life circumstances, I've adjusted where I work remotely 4 days a week now, and I'm on campus 1 day a week.
Oh, okay.
Because in my division, I'm actually one of the most senior employees, and one of our supervisors takes half days on that day, and so they bring me in to act as the supervisor and take care of things while he's gone.
Cool. Okay.
One of the things I'm hearing from both of you, and again, I'm sorry, I am a higher education degree master student. So, is the notion of social capital and academic capital. So the lack of academic capital, I heard Suzanne say, when she says, I didn't know what a major was, I didn't know what a minor was, not knowing how to navigating, once we learn to navigate, once we understand. When I was in getting my associates, um, whatever happened, something happened. I got frustrated. I just dropped the class. Somebody said, "You're going to drop your GPA." It's like, what's a GPA? I was already like my second or third semester. I didn't understand what a fail was going to do for me. Yeah, I clueless. I just want to finish college. Yeah, so sometimes being the non-traditional student, especially being the first generation, not knowing is called, and then once you know it, so lack of academic capital, gaining academic capital are one of the theories of student development. So a question, Shavonne, where do you get most of your support from as a student, as a person? What gets you through that day?
Honestly, like I said, my coworkers and my parents. While my parents, or especially my mother, might not understand my degree that I'm pursuing. I'm actually a criminal justice major. And she doesn't understand the opportunities that degree presents to me, both in the private sector and even at UNLV. That actually does open up some avenues for me. So I mean, I've always had a very supportive family because my parents never finished high school. Traditionally, they both got GEDs because their parents never encouraged them to, study and go to school. Whereas, in my family, it was education is everything. You're disabled. You need that degree, if you're gonna financially survive the world. And so I was the first in my family to graduate high school and get accepted into college. Granted, like I said, my life took a detour when I realized education is harder than I thought it was. And then I took some years for myself and decided on the path for me. I went back for myself, not because it was expected.
Great. And what about you, Suzanne?
Ask me the question again.
Where do you get the most? Girl, I emailed you the questions. Where do you think you get the most support from? Suzanne and I are good friends. So are
Well,
Siobhan and I.
once I came out of my shell, because, a lot of times I was like, I felt awkward because of my age. Everybody was so much younger than me. I didn't want to act like I didn't know what the hell was going on. You know what I mean? And I will tell you, Bev, it took me 30 years to get that 2-year degree. So it doesn't matter how long it takes you.
You and
Anyway,
I are
the
going to hit the
support.
road. You and I are going to hit the road. We're going to be an act.
So, the support I got was, once I got comfortable being on campus, because I like in-person classes. I'm not really great. I mean, I'm okay with the online stuff, but I'm that kid that needs to ask questions. I'm that kid that sits up front. I'm that kid that asks the questions that nobody else wants to ask, you know? And and so the support I got was just I think a lot of my professors were really grateful that I was talking because not many kids were talking. You know what I mean? Everybody's on the phone and stuff like that. So that was supportive because I'm really keen on being aware of, I can read the room. I can read people, you know. Um, Reaching out to an advisor was really helpful. The counselor was super helpful, because I come from an era where they don't really listen to women. You know what I mean? They're very dismissive of women. Um, and, neither one of my parents graduated, went to college. Um, so I didn't get a lot of support and encouragement from, well, I didn't get it from my son, the kid I had when I was 15, but my daughters were really supportive and encouraging. And and that was really important to me because I wanted to encourage them. You know, I wanted them to know they had a voice and to use it because I never did. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. My first semester, as I said, I have a big group of friends on Facebook. And my first semester, I was shocked at how much books cost.
Oh yeah,
And
there's
and
that.
I just could not freaking believe just another little, I'm not trying to convince you to go for your master's, but I think the most I spent one semester was $40 for books. The most. higher education may be very different from other masters, but the majority of my reading is PDFs. The majority of what I have to read, the professors are sending us in PDFs. Isn't costing me a thing. All
That's
right.
cool.
But $40 is the most I spent. I was like, $40. I was shocked because I wasn't spending that. Anyway, so I was complaining about, oh my God, I can't believe how much this is. And a small group of my friends took up a collection and sent me $500 to help me with my books on my first semester. So that really touched me. My parents are gone. My children, my son, my daughter's like, oh, it's kind of cool you're going to college. My granddaughter and I were in college at the same time. My sons are boys, so I don't get the same emotional that I get from a girl, right? But and my son that I live with doesn't really emote. But he said, "Oh, look at this box that just got delivered. What's that?" I'm like, "I don't know. What is that?" I think it's for you. And I'm like, I didn't order anything. And he got me a laser printer and said, "This will be easier for you for school."
Oh, that's cool.
So that was I take that. That's what that's his language. So I took that. Um, but
I will wanna say, it was really helpful, Bev, to get the Pell Grants. You know what
yes,
I mean?
yeah.
I was paying for my schooling all along, and I got a Pell Grant quite by accident.
Money is one of those, again, what I've learned in higher ed, right? Money is one of those obstacles, definitely. I will say, when we talk about support there for myself, I will say that I've had a lack of support. So I tax person, I was working with H&R Block when I started, and my supervisor wasn't the most pleasant person anyway. So the next semester, she said, blah, blah, blah. I said, I can't do that. I go to school. I can't give you any extra hours. She goes, you're still in school? And she was a couple of years older than me. I thought you were just taking a class or two. I said, no, I'm in college to get a degree. Oh my God, I could never do that. When you get those people that say that to you or crinkle up their face, that's their insecurities or their baggage or it's their issue, right? Um, I've had friends that were like, oh, I couldn't do that. I don't know how you go back to school. And but I also, excuse me, I had my advisor, my undergrad advisor, was older than me, crotchety, and about the third or fourth time I met him, I realized he kept bringing the same incident that happened. And I'm like, I'm not dating you. I'm not sleeping with you. How come you keep talking about that same thing that we had? It's 4 semesters now, let it go, right? So I called up the department and I said, I'd like a new advisor. I'm so sorry that we don't do that. You have to stay with the same advisor until you graduate. And I said, I'm sorry. I apologize. This was my fault. I didn't express this correctly. I will never speak to that man again as long as I live. Hold on a moment. So I got a new advisor, right? I had to speak to the dean. And I told the dean, I said, listen, I expect I it was a woman. I said, I respect your position, I understand your position, and I understand diplomacy, but I'm tired and I'm a grown woman and I don't have time for that. So let me tell you, this man is looking at his watch because it's like 5 minutes to retirement. He doesn't care anymore. He's dialing it in. He's disgruntled. He's not happy. He's dismissive. He's condescending, and I don't have time for it. I'm not 18. I will kick his butt. So to avoid that, I need a new advisor. So they gave me a new advisor who was nice and friendly and great. And I failed remedial math 3 times, 3 consecutive times. I took it at CSN. I failed it twice. And I took it to CSN and I quit because I didn't understand what was going on. I'd already taken it twice. So how come I'm having this problem? So I said, there's something wrong here. And I stopped. And I spent a whole semester with a different major just so I wouldn't stop because I had hit a wall. I needed to pass these math classes. I had done all my, like foundational classes, but I couldn't move forward. So I'm talking to him and he said, well, since you're just in college, anyway, you could just change your major. It doesn't matter. It's not like you're you're trying to get a job or anything. This was the new advisor, a younger guy. And I turned around like this. And he said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "I was looking to see who you were speaking to. Because you didn't ask me why I'm here. You didn't ask me what my plans were, but you decided that I didn't have any because of my age." I got up and walked out. And I found out that you don't have to have an advisor.
Well, I will tell you this. Let me interrupt you, Bev. Shavonne, do you have anything to add to that?
Uh, yeah, I'll say that I was lucky enough to have a different experience than poor Miss Bev there. My advisor, I picked him at random. Um, and honestly, he was the best thing that ever happened to me. He's been highly involved, and meets me every, time right before the semester to plan out, shows me my, thing and make sure I'm staying on track, checks in on me because he also knows I'm an employee. And while I'm not a full time student, I'm only going half time because one of the things I did learn when I first tried going to college is a full course load is not something I am mentally capable of doing. I can only take max 2 courses a semester. That is my mental max to handle. Except in summer, which that's the exception, I can take 1 class per session. um, and so, like I said, I had a very different experience with the advisors, which I'm very happy and blessed with that. And hearing these stories from Miss Bev about that train wreck.
It was a
Uh,
train wreck, but I tell the story to say that everything isn't perfect. You got to
oh yeah,
persevere and you got to speak up for yourself and
yeah,
you've
and
got to
I
be
I
your advocate.
completely agree with the speaking up with myself because I've had professors in the past where when I first tried to go to college, I stayed quiet, never said a word, listened to them like their word was gospel. Now I'm like, pardon me, excuse me, no, you know,
That
I'm like,
reminds me.
I'm like, nope, this don't fly in my world.
Yeah.
I'm not paying, $10,000 a semester for you to sit here trying to feed me bull, you know.
So I'm going
So
to ask number six, if
and
you ladies need to read it.
and then one
Oh, I'm
one
so
other
sorry.
thing I
Go,
wanted to
Shavonne.
add is when it comes to support, and how you were talking about people who bought things that you needed to, for your education last semester. In the 6 years it's taken me now to get to this point for my final semester, because I started back in January of 2019. So it's taken me almost 7 years to get all my degree. Um, this last semester, I had to get a book for one of my criminal justice classes that used. It was $150. And so my parents, who are both retired, and don't have much money because they're on pensions, um, they invested in my education and paid for that book, you know, because I was 2 semesters away from graduating, and for them, that matters to them because yes, they have one daughter who's already graduated college, but because I've never given up, and done it for 6 years, they wanted to, show extra support that they believe in me, and so they paid for this ridiculously expensive book that I opened exactly twice.
Oh, geez, that's the undergrad story. So if you need to read number six, and I will repeat it twice because it's a little wordy, okay? But I am again higher ed, so I had to throw that in there because I could hear my advisor. Oh, I have great advisors and masters, just so you know. Um, there is a pedagogical theory, pedagogy, the how children and young people learn. Okay, so it's a theory of student development that talks about how students grow beyond academics, how you become a fully realized person. Okay, how you learn to think and how you set yourself and all of this. So, student development beyond just the academics. But pedagogy is how children learn. So let's talk about andragogy, how adults learn and how adults develop, okay? And so my question is to the ladies, and I'll start with Suzanne. How have you, as a fully realized adult, changed and developed by being a college student?
Well, you know, uh, I did go to the dictionary on what these words meant. Because I was
But
like,
I gave
oh,
you a whole
the
paragraph
heck is
after it.
that, man?
I gave them a whole paragraph explaining it.
And anyway, you know, I, the pedagogy talks about the teacher is the expert and they're, educating the children and the children are kind of a blank slate. I
Yes.
didn't, I mean, I've been around a while. It's not like I just was born. And
It's fine. It took,
andragogy
took me 2 years to.
andragogy is more where the teacher is a facilitator. And
Yeah.
I think that the difference is the example of the one teacher who gave me the opportunity, not just me but others, the opportunity to take the quizzes over again, because we don't, it wasn't like we were learning it all together, and it's not like I went from grade grade 1 to grade 2 to grade 3. There were a lot of spaces in between, you know what I mean? So and then I had that experience with that one professor, which was kind of like who remembered me, you know. But I was able to come back to another teacher who was kind of like doing that same thing and go, this really is not helpful. Give me the opportunity to, explore and expand. You can't just dish out information to me and think I'm going to, you know, absorb it. I have a life experience. You have to present it to me in a way that I can relate from a life experience. And I remember going to the dean of the sociology department at one point before I graduated, a couple of semesters before I graduated, really. And I asked him about ageism. I was like, okay, because even at that time I was thinking about wanting to work on campus, and I was like, you know, really, why, if I pursue this, are there going to be opportunities for me as an older person? I'm not 25 or 35 or even 55, you know. And he said there is ageism. Now, I don't know what it's like now. I don't really care. I know that my higher power has a plan for me. But the difference between the two methodologies of learning is that the the androgyny is the teachers or the professors are much more. I meet them on an equal level. There's not that I'm the expert and you don't know shit. Excuse my language. You know what I mean? So they help, um, they're, in meeting them on equal terms, they're more open to helping me to understand concepts that I might not grasp.
But how have you changed? Do you feel that you as a person, not academics, do you feel as a person that you have come to the end of this journey slightly different? What have you gained that is not academic? I'll come back to you. So, Shavonne,
Well, I mean, like I said, education has always been something emphasized as very important in my family. But, and when I was younger, yeah, it was always, listen to the authority, listen to the teacher, listen to the adults. And then when I became the adult and, went back to school, as the adult by my adult choice, you know, and had learned confidence and who I was as a person, you know, I've, seen differences in myself. I'm more willing to advocate for my needs and tell them, hey, this is not working for me, or hey, can you explain this a different way because this ain't working, you know? So I'm a lot more advocating for myself and, you know, being more who I am now, who I've grown to be. Education's still important, but I know who I am. And so no one can blow smoke at me, you know?
thank you.
It's like I know what I need. Like I said, even trying to go to college when I was 18 taught me some things like like I said earlier, knowing I can't take more than 2 classes a semester. That, something that I learned, and I've seen the benefit of that because I have a 3.5 GPA. You know
And that's your
that
academic capital that you've learned what works for you
yeah, yeah.
within that.
What I've learned, in this experience of trying to go to college, then dropping out and living my life, I've learned what works, for me as an adult now, and what I'm willing to tolerate with my education. Because I understand that yes, they are professors, they are the authority figure, and they are due some respect. But I'm a human being, and I'm due respect as well.
I I'm going to come
Thank
back to
you,
Suzanne.
Shavonne.
I'm going to come back to Suzanne. I had a professor this semester. I had him last semester. Last semester, I didn't like him. I know I'm not going to say that. I liked him, but you could tell he was kind of new and he taught from his insecurity. So he would change his mind in the middle of saying something and it caused a lot of confusion. So he could have been better. He wasn't bad. He could have been better. And I wrote my eval, right? And I spoke to my advisor about it. And this semester there was a marked change in him. Much better, much better, much better. He said it, he was going to do it. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it that way. But like I said, he wasn't a bad guy because sometimes you do get SOBs, right? But he wasn't. He wasn't. Um, and we were doing something in class, and I said it straight, direct. I'm not hood, but I was raised in the hood, so I could get hood. And it came up very hood. And some of the class was laughing. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. He goes, Miss Bev, I know who you are already. It's okay. So I've always been comfortable with who I am, but I think what college has given me more authority or agency in who I am. I don't take I want to say I don't take things at face value now because especially since I was interdisciplinary studies, regardless of what 2 degrees you take it into a multidisciplinary, they changed it to multidisciplinary studies now. You learn that things can work together and that no one problem or issue has one reason. It has many reasons and multiple solutions. And so when somebody in my family is like, blah, 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 I'm like, well, wait, stop. Let's talk about this. A, but what causes A? Let's go to B. And then let's talk about who's making a profit from it. I start breaking stuff down. I get on my family's nerves now. I'm probably got on their nerves before, but now I educate, get on their nerves. So, but I will say again, I masters and undergrad are night and day, night and day. I really feel that you are treated like an adult. It's a smaller you. I haven't had a class more than 15 people. Your professors get to know you and you're more insulated and it's a cohort. So you start to see the same people because they're much smaller classes. So definitely. So Suzanne, have you thought about your answer?
Well, I certainly don't allow anybody to talk down to me.
Mhm.
And I don't really, I don't participate in, I don't need to defend myself. I loved what Siobhan said about, I can remember when I was younger, I believed the voice of authority. I question everything. I question. And for years I've told my daughters, especially my oldest daughter, there people learn different ways. Some people are really academic and some people are really creatives. And I'm a creative. You have to show me stuff. You have to explain it to me. And I'm not embarrassed to say, hey, talk to me like I'm 5 years old and explain it, in simple terms.
And that
I
takes
don't, I
bravery.
don't, I don't judge. Like I had, one of my professors was super brilliant. He's the guy that would give us like four 30-page readings, and I'm like, oh my God, and all academic, right? And I found myself going in circles. And I met up with him and I said, and I got lost in all the paperwork that I got sidetracked. But being able to ask for help without shame, I'm not embarrassed to say, you need to explain it to me in simpler terms. That doesn't mean I'm stupid because I'm not,
No,
you know?
no, that's very
And
important.
I'm not going to let anybody imply that I am, you know? Um, so, like I said, did you want to say something, Siobhan?
No, no, I was just listening. I was going to add something when you were done.
Yeah. So, I've just learned how to ask for what I need, and I have to accept people where they're at. I can't change them. I'm powerless over other people. And when I want them to be the way I want them to be or need them to be, that's my problem, not theirs. But I can ask for what I need.
Okay, great.
So,
Siobhan?
Yeah. With this particular subject too, it's like when I first tried going to college, I have a disability, a learning disability with not just physically, but a learning disability specifically in math. And so I failed remedial math 3 different times. But during my break and all this, when I was enrolling, because I first attended CSN to get my associate's degree, because way cheaper. Well, they told me about the regular math class that actually is called, I think it was like 130E. It was something E. Um, that is the regular math class, but it has a tutoring component in the class. For those of us who are struggling, we had access to tutors, you know. And so it was, like I said, it was a normal class, um, not remedial, but it had a tutor that I had access to if I needed them. And I managed to get out of that class, with a C. That was actually math was the big reason I dropped out, because I was struggling so bad with it. It was like that one core requirement for my first 2 years of school that I kept failing, that was holding me back from finishing the degree, that, made me want to drop out. And then, I changed schools, got to CSN, and they're like, oh no, we have a solution for that. We have this normal class with additional support.
And that's what higher
And
education is,
yeah, and
providing support for
that's what I
students.
needed. Yes, I got out of there with a C, but because of my struggle with math, a C it was, gold for me. You know, that I would have been happy with a D, because it's still passing. But a C was golden for me, having that kind of support for that subject that has been a lifelong nightmare.
Yeah, I definitely
And
understand.
that was the point that I really believed I can do this. I can finish school. I can finish my degree.
Thank you. So, ladies, Amber, Agnes, Joe, and Sophia, I feel like you should be like a singing group there. I want to open the floor up to questions. So if you have just unmute yourself, it's a small group and just go for it. Questions, comments, anything you want to know.
Took me a minute to find the unmute button again.
Okay.
I really appreciate all of you sharing your experiences. The thing that really, I feel a lot less alone right now in some of the struggles that I've had in my first 2 semesters of the occupational therapy doctorate program. I'm I'm only I'm only 33, but I had to bring myself up from a really early age, and I've just been working since I was 15, and it's just I grew up really fast, and so hearing y'all say like that, the standing up for yourself, and it's not, I felt like I've been really like difficult, but it's like I've worked so many jobs, I've like lived so much life. I'm not walking into school kind of with this attitude of like, yeah, I'm the first person in my family to go to school, so there's still a lot that I don't understand about the process. But I still, and I don't know if anybody has any advice. It's like I have no problem speaking up and saying, hey, like XYZ, basically asking like, what are the guidelines here? Like I reached out to UNLV. I'm rambling. I'm so sorry. I reached out to UNLV policy departments because back when I did my undergrad was in dance in New York, so shout out to New York. We were using paper syllabus out.
You went
You look at it. Sorry.
We lost you for a second.
for a
Oh,
minute, you
We
muted.
said paper syllabus and then we lost you.
yeah. Like one of the struggles I'm having right now is like back when I was doing my undergraduate, we used our, paper syllabi, and now that everything's digital, like professors will change in a class will like change the syllabus, and I print the stuff out or I download a copy and I just use that. So it's things like that that I've brought up is like, hey, this is kind of a problem. I'm a caregiver. I have other things in my life. When you change the dates on things, it like, I don't know. Do you have any advice of like, I've already brought it up to the professor, I've already talked to the department head, and I feel like if I keep going, I'm just going to be labeled as like the difficult student, and I'm going to have bad relationships with my professors. So it's like, I kind of feel like I'm starting to make myself really small and not talk in classes and not bring up that I have issues because I feel like I'm getting labeled as difficult.
And and you might not. The intersection is the first thing that comes to my mind as a department uh that can help you, right? The intersection is on the first floor of the student union.
Okay.
They do many different multi-level things. But the other thing is you said you're a caregiver. Funny as
Oh, yeah, it's been a little bit less during school, but I have family and I have to be there for them.
right.
Um,
So it's
I think it's really unfair for a professor to change the game plan midstream
yeah,
without giving you plenty
yeah,
of time frame to adjust. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like, and also I think, one of the blessings of being older is I can meet people where they're at, and there's not that you're smarter than, better than, older than, or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I can say, this isn't working for me, or I need more help, or and point out, because they're learning too. A lot of these professors are
new.
not well seasoned
Yeah,
professors, you know so whenever I think of I think, uh, my favorite thing is, this is my own personal thing. I am no better than, but I
yeah,
am no less than any other human being.
yeah. I say that too.
So I don't really, whenever I catch myself thinking that, I have to pull myself up short, but I don't let other people, you know, do it to me. You get what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So my one of my tactics is to not speak to the professor personally at office hours, but to say it in class in front of everybody else. Because
Yeah, I
I'm not
don't
the
do
only
that.
person dealing with it. That's me. But think about it. That's
yeah,
me. I'm not the only one dealing with it, and they're thinking it, but they're not saying it. So if I
yeah,
say it and then everybody else is shaking their head, that helps. The other thing, and I'm hesitating on this, is because I don't have those connections anymore, but I've been thinking about this, is Title IX is supposed to protect parents of young children. It is still being adjudicated, even though it was brought into law in the 1980s. There's still parts of it that are being adjudicated, and we don't have an administration that is currently very favorable to
yeah,
students in colleges. But that I would speak to the DRC. I would at
yeah.
least speak to them
I have my appointment
because
set up.
because a professor can't ignore you and your needs. But if you are labeled, not labeled, that's the wrong word, but if you're part of the DRC,
Yeah,
then they have to. They're
yeah,
federally mandated. And again, we don't have a strong, but
yeah,
in normal circumstances, they're federally mandated to accommodate you.
yeah.
Can
So,
I? I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
I wanted to say if I could chime in, because I feel exactly the same way. I was my last semester at CSN. I was in a math class, And I felt kind of what Joe was kind of feeling, like you're
Mhm.
being labeled as the difficult student.
Mhm.
And halfway through the semester, or a quarter of the way through the semester, I got established with the DRC, and um and that did make a big difference. And I even decided to just get established with the DRC at UNLV, even if I haven't even signed up for classes yet. I was already like emailing them. And but I think, even though it's totally valid, I think, to feel like you're being difficult, I think people like us being difficult is how we normalize difficult students to professors. Professors will get used to people being in the DRC and needing accommodations, and that becomes more normalized. And like, it's hard for us because it's new and it's not, common. And so, like, us being willing to do that, it's difficult, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta say, this meeting and listening to everybody, I just it takes so much more energy to like sit there and advocate for yourself or have all of the conversations with the different, especially when it's happening across different classes, and trying to be respectful and polite and follow the correct channels for all these things. So this was a bit of a recharge for me of like, okay, this makes sense, because I did feel like it was related to being a little bit older than my classmates. So thanks for the recharge, everybody.
Shoot. Thank you. Sophia, you were I'm not calling you out, but we had chit-chatted a little before we began. So I want to give you an opportunity, if you'd like to speak or ask a question or make a comment if you would like.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, 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 don't apologize. Don't.
Um, I mean, I've had difficulty in trying to complete my degree over the years. I mean, I originally am from San Diego, California. I actually moved to Vegas back in 2019, and I like changed a couple majors in the past few years because I was a theater major, and then COVID hit, so I just stick to business. And and at first, like, I kind of didn't feel too motivated to be in school because I wasn't fine. I thought like I was being too dependent on my parents, so I just mostly focused in school too much. No, I'm sorry. I mostly focused way too much at work. I mean I was able to be employed for the past few years, but now, like, I kind of realized like I don't really want to be in the same job position that I am. Like, for example, where I used to work, there's a wall dedicated to people who's been with the company for 40 years. And I got so traumatized when a cocktail waitress told me, like, I was 25 when you were there. And I'm like, oh no. I was just like, oh shoot. I was like, you know what? I gotta get my butt back to school. So I went back, and then and then and then recently I got a job as an accounts receivable for the finance team. I did that for 2 years, but now this is going to be my last month working because my parents told me that they were going to fully support me to go back to school again. Yeah. So I'm just gonna focus on being a full-time student. And there were times I did worry, like, like, because I've been in school for like almost 10 years, like, am I feeling too old? Because again, I did thought about the traditional way. Like, I'm 28. I'm gonna turn 29 this year. And and I'm pretty excited now that, like, I hear stories from you guys. Like, I kind of feel better about myself, to say it this way. And,
Sometimes that's all that's needed, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't
Yeah,
that just like the foundation of AA and NA, just talking amongst other people, and
yeah.
being supportive. I will throw this in. I know Amber is because I just did hers, but Joe, Agnes, and Sophia, are you members of our Facebook group? Have you
No,
joined our RSO, I should say?
no, this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Okay, so I put in the chat for Joe, Dave Schwartz. I've met him, I've talked to him. He's the ombudsman at UNLV. He can't fire anybody. He told me I can't fire anybody, but he can listen and help you navigate.
Okay.
That
I
is his
can
job.
I, as an employee of, who's actually worked with Dave many times, I do second that. He's great. He
He's a
can
great.
help facilitate and mediate, meetings between you and professors, to get them to understand that their approach is not working for you.
Right. So you have that, so you have that person so you don't feel like you're the troublemaker, or it lessens that a bit. I'm gonna put a I'm so sorry. Sophia, did we cut you off? I'm sorry. Did you have something else you wanted to say or a question or anything?
No, no, I was there, but all I can say is like, I've had a pretty positive experience with my academic advisors. I mean, one of them left to pursue her dream, and she recommended me a really good one. And then I got a new one because the previous one I couldn't meet up because due to time conflict.
Hmm.
But other than that, like I'm pretty happy. I have pretty good people by my side, and I can't wait to involve more.
So let me clear up something I said. I started UNLV as a business major, and the two stories I had was with the business department. I took 1 year, I changed my major just so I wouldn't lose my rhythm, and
Mhm.
I took extra classes, which I then later found out if you take too many credits, you get in trouble with financial aid, and it became a whole thing. But I fixed it. But someone then told me about multidisciplinary studies where you could take two or three majors, combine them, and then you have to do what's called a capstone, which is like a mini dissertation to defend it in front of a panel of professors. But with that class, I only needed one math class, and it was very different. It was an algebra class, and the professor I had put us in groups because he didn't want to grade 75 papers. And like Shavonne, I got a C, and I was like, "Thank you, Jesus." But um, the DRC helped me with some accommodations, so I had that professor in multidisciplinary. I loved her. I was baking her cookies. My not professor, I'm so sorry, my advisor. So I had good advisors and bad advisors. I just want to say that you don't let these things become obstacles because everyone isn't good at their job or empathetic or the right fit for you. So I just brought that story not to put down any advisors, but just to highlight how we can, persevere if we need to. So in the chat, and I see that Joe, yes, Joe, I've only had one professor older than me. So one professor I met, I said something to him. I said, "Wait, what year were you born?" And I said, "Oh, so are my twins. You're the same age as my children." So trust me, I got you there. And I'm glad, Amber, that you transferred to UNLV. So let me just tell you a little bit about our group. We're an RSO, a registered student organization. I put the link there. You have to join the RSO first. The reason we asked you to join the RSO first is we had problems when I first started the group. We had infiltrators and spies. So this way we make sure that you are a student. And then I will send you a welcome package, which gives you information on how to join the Facebook group. And the Facebook group is really the heart of the RSO. It started a year and a half before the RSO. But this is where you could talk and you could say, "Hey, I need this." Or somebody have that. One year, somebody said, "Does anybody have 30-minute meals?" That is a school related. I got to cook for my kids. I need to cook quick, right? I do taxes and school this semester, so I thank goodness know how. And I you name it, I'm allergic to it. I have celiac. I'm allergic to everything else. I spend this time cooking two meatloaves. I did a Costco size thing of chicken thighs. And when school starts, I shouldn't have to cook anything. I cook all my food up and then bag it up. So I've got meatloaf, I've got chicken wings, I've got chicken thighs, I've got, arroz con gandules I'm going to do later. And so sometimes we need support in many different ways. And that's why the Facebook group is a great thing to do. Please join the RSO first. And we only ask well, you'll see it in the letter. We ask a $5 membership dues per semester, so it's not a lot of money. Does anyone else have any questions before I ask the ladies their last two comments? No? Everybody's
I have a
sure,
question.
sure. Go ahead.
Um, I know that somebody, don't make my brain don't make me tell you who. Somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Miss Bev,
Mhm.
with two different majors that you did one major and then you decided to switch or you double majored. And I'm kind of wondering if you could share a little bit more about how you came to that decision because I'm kind of stuck. I've been in accounting for 10 years. I have 10 years, over 10 years of solid experience. And so when I went back to school, I'm like, well, that's what I'm going to go for. But my passion kind of is mental health. And I don't know how I would do how I would make a career doing both. I feel like I have to pick and I don't want to. So I
Okay, so Suzanne
Yeah.
and I, it's interesting, again, the similarities. Multidisciplinary studies, and then Suzanne had two majors. So I'll let her explain hers, I'll explain mine. So
Okay.
multidisciplinary studies is an undergrad degree, liberal arts, where you pick two or three majors. You then have to have, you got to get all your core classes done. And then when
Mhm.
you get to your 300s and your 400s, you have to have, well, because I had 2 degrees, seven of each. I think if you have 3 degrees, maybe it's five of each. But I had to have seven of each 300 or 400 in each degree, whatever I wanted.
What do you?
Whatever I wanted. So I could not take
Oh,
entrepreneurial management because I couldn't pass remedial math and go up the ladder with 4 math classes. But I was able to, Joe, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Have a good night if she already left.
Bye. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you all.
Thank you. So I then you have to take 4 consecutive classes in interdisciplinary studies. And the papers that you do in the first semester carry over to the second semester. Second semester, the papers you can carry over into the last semester. And then you have a 50-page project. But it's not as hard as it sounds because you have been working on it for 4 semesters. And you are going to explain. So I was entrepreneurial management and urban studies. And I only took urban studies because it was online, not because I was really interested in it, but it would make my life easier. And then we had COVID and everything was online. Jokes on me. So, but I had to say how these two work together. So, accounting and did you say mental health?
yeah. I don't even know what that would even look like. I just know that when my
Go,
math professor had one or two discussions that were meant even vaguely mental health related, I was more active and more,
go
and
talk to the advisors. And if I could find her name, because she was so great, but go talk to the advisors in multidisciplinary studies.
okay.
Just talk to them, and that'll help you. Now, Suzanne will tell you about getting 2 majors.
Thank you.
Suzanne, we can't hear you.
Do you have an advisor that you've been talking to, Amber?
So for UNLV, I haven't been given an advisor yet, or I don't have one. Because I did everything going into Lee Business School for accounting, they have their own setup where as soon as you get in, you have to do the group advising session. And that's like, you literally can't do anything until you do that.
Mhm.
And then you can't see an advisor until the semester
Yes.
after that, I think. So I don't know.
I
No.
guess that's part of the Lee Business School, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Because in the Wilson, College of Liberal Arts, I never had a problem with just picking an advisor really. So it
Mhm.
was different. And then, like I never took any of the fun classes. I just, I took all sociology classes and then I was doing all the anthropology classes and I went for the double major just because, well, practically 15 credits as opposed to 30 credits made much more sense to me, And then also Bev mentioned about, having too many credits for graduation. You know, I was slow to go and talk to financial aid about, like, in my last semester, I got a scholarship and I didn't know how that worked. I just thought it was just money I was going to get. I didn't know I had to take 12 credits in order to get it,
Mm.
and then, I had these two classes that were absolute, that I had to take in order to graduate, the history of anthropology and then the College of Liberal Arts career readiness. And 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 I kind of like made a mistake on that. I didn't know anything about having to take an internship. I had to do an internship, and I was like, an internship? What's that? So I was like, I kept going like, and so I had my last four classes all signed up for the fall, and then I took the internship over the summer for College of Liberal Arts, COLA 402, and I changed the enrollment to summer instead of, I kind of screwed myself, Amber. So talk to people and ask questions is my suggestion to you. Ask questions, you know, and find out, what is it you need? And then as far as like being interested in mental health, I've been involved in the recovery programs for years, and that's my passion. You know, I want to make sure that there's help for teenagers, because I grew up in a dysfunctional family. And I think that's a great thing. And I don't know yet how I'm going to like I wanted to ask Bev about moving into the master's program. Do I have to take some like specific classes to it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, that now that I have my undergraduate degree in sociology and anthropology, if I want to do a master's, I can go into any area.
That is correct. So
But
we
I
have that
but
is
I don't know
correct.
how that works.
We'll
So
talk about it later. We
I'm
have
gonna have to
one,
ask
so
about
it
that.
is now 7 o'clock. So technically this is over. If you guys would just give me 60 seconds. Suzanne, please give the ladies one piece of advice.
You are never too old to be who you were intended to be. So don't ever think in terms of any of the blocks, like age or anything like that. Just go for it,
Thank
you
you.
know.
Shavonne,
And I have to agree with Suzanne. You're never too old to keep going. Like I said, I dropped out at 20, started back 2 months before I turned 30, and I will be graduating at 37 years old. So you are never too old to go, and don't be afraid to be the annoying person who pounds on doors and advocate for yourself. you know you're an adult now. You don't have to be beholden to some authority like they are God. you know um so be your advocate, be loud. you know do what you need to do to be successful.
my I told myself that I would try to use a different language, but I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest. My best advice is to walk around with a fuck them attitude.
100%.
Fuck them. No, no, we don't do it that way. Why not? That's not what I need. You're not meeting me at my needs. Also, I will say this. As a higher educator, my professors will probably lose their shit on me right now, but I believe that college, to a certain degree, is that you are a consumer and it is a product. If you change your mind and look at it as you have paid for a product, you will walk into classrooms and speak to people with a different attitude.
I
I'm paying
completely
for
agree.
Don't waste my time. Are you wasting my time?
That's
That
that's exactly it. That's what I have to
Don't
agree
waste
with.
my time.
I've
Yes, I
actually
have to
been
do
very
the
much of
work,
the
but don't waste my time.
yeah, I've been very much of the mindset of I paid for my place at this table.
Right.
You're not going to waste my time while I do it.
Yes. Who, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to, I should have asked those ladies for their, oh, I have their email, that's right. I found the name. I am actually going through, don't ask me why, I still have some of my emails from 2020, 2021. I found my advisor's name. Amber, it's Debbie Patini. That's the person in the College of Liberal Arts. If she's still there, I don't know. This
Yeah,
is
but she's in, are you in Lee? Are you in the,
no, but she can talk to anybody. She doesn't have to
yeah, well, are you in the Lee Business
business
School
school.
or
Yeah.
do they have separate advisors in
Yeah,
that?
I think they do. I
But
think
she
I'm
can't, I remember, like she said, I remember they won't speak to you until you've done one semester. Go over there and talk to Wilson. You can talk to anybody. You got questions.
okay.
Two ladies are telling you they have, through the liberal arts department, you can tell them who we are and how you talked about it. And I'm talking to you about multidisciplinary, so you can talk
When
about
I went into the advisor thing, it's on unlv.edu and there's a whole list of advisors. I didn't know that it would, see, here's something I didn't know about. I thought they were all good for all of it.
Specific advisors.
it. No.
Like
No, stepping on
advisor.
toes.
Listen,
So
my
3 minutes after the deadline, I don't want to keep anybody. There is a form that you'll be mailed automatically. Please tell me how this was. Or you could tell Shavonne and the two of you can tell Shavonne and Suzanne they know I love them and I appreciate them. And just let them know how this was for you.
Thanks, Bev, for asking me to speak.
You are welcome. Thank you for speaking. Sophia, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Amber, thank you for coming. I hope that this was helpful to you. Um,
And you know, Sophia, you didn't hear, but I just turned 70 yesterday, so 27 or 28. Shit. You got your whole freaking life ahead of you,
girl,
girl.
we're not
I
laughing at you, but we
appreciate
are
it's
laughing at you.
okay. I know. It's just that like
Everybody's in such a rush. Oh my God, I gotta
And
finish.
we're laughing at you. I'm gonna be 68 in March, so
I know.
we're encouraging laughing at you. But when I was
No, I'm not
28,
laughing at you, honey. I'm not laughing at you, but you sounded like you were anxious because you were 20, and I could be wrong, but you sounded like you were anxious because you're 27 or 28 years old.
I know. Thanks though. I mean, when you're an only child and you have high expectations, I mean, it does kind of like, oh,
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, I completely understand that, Sophia, because I'm the oldest. So, there was a lot of very heavy expectations on me,
yeah.
being the first one to finish high school, because both my you weren't here because I said both my parents never finished high school. They both got GEDs. My dad, joined the military right at 18, and so a lot of heavy expectation. So completely understand that, so I know when I dropped out at 20, I disappointed my parents for many, many years, you know.
we all have our obstacles, but we're in a unique position to get over them because we are older. That does not have to be the obstacle. That could be the
Absolutely, that is the
the
truth.
I
golden
Now that we're
appreciate
older,
it.
the
Yeah.
obstacles are less, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Bye, everybody. I love
Bye.
you.
Thank you
Bye.
guys so much.
See you
Thank
later.
you. Thank you for
Thank
coming,
you.
ladies.
Bye.
Suzanne, you and I are going to take our act on the road, girl.
You and me both.
No, I'm serious. I got plans. We're going to do speaking engagements. We are.
Okay, cool.
We're going to rent ourselves. We will talk.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Siobhan, it was nice meeting you.
Oh,
Amber, it was
you
nice
Have
too.
a
meeting
good
you.
Oh,
one.
PTT.
Nice to meet you
Good
too.
luck, ladies.
Okay.
Always, always
Thank
Okay, so
finish
you.
Amber, I
really
put her
fast.
name, I put her name in the chat so you can see it.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome. I don't
that's
know if she's
perfect.
still, this is from 2021, so who knows if she's still there.
I can research though. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, ladies. Bye,
Bye.
Siobhan.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.